Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to Lauren and Thom and Alex for participating as panelists. Really appreciative of your time, especially where we are in the calendar. Truly peak season. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we're there. We've almost made it. Hopefully we'll make it through it. But yeah, thanks again for joining and excited to kind of kick off another a monthly session of the Matt's Chats webinar where I like to bring in one representative from a 3PL, a logistics tech company, as well as a brand operator, just to really share sentiment on some of the biggest headlines in e-commerce and logistics and supply chain. So excited for these three superstars to be here. If you've listened to prior webinars of mine, I think you've seen Thom. You've certainly seen Alex a few times, particularly when the whole tariff issue became an issue earlier in the year and late last year. And really excited for Lauren, a first timer on one of my webinars, and I trust won't be the last time she'll be here. So thank you all. Want to kick off by allowing the three panelists just to share, a minute or two about their backgrounds, the companies they work for, and what it is that their companies do. So maybe we'll start with Thom, and then Alex, and then finally Lauren. So Thom, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks a lot for having us, and thanks, Alex, and thanks, Lauren. So I'm Thom Campbell, and I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer for a mid-sized third-party logistics firm called Capacity. We're an omni-channel provider that does B2B and B2C order fulfillment, and we do it for a lot of beauty brands. We have other verticals we service, but because one of our beloved clients is here, I'm going to focus on that piece.
I'll go. Thanks, Thom and Lauren and Matt, for having me. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Passport Global. We're an end-to-end internationalization provider for brands, particularly built on Shopify. And we love the cosmetics vertical. We have a lot of brands there, and we collaborate a lot with Capacity. So it's a great space. It's a great category for going global, especially cross-border. So yeah, thank you for having me, Matt.
Oh, Lauren. Yeah.
I'm Lauren Ferguson. I'm VP of Operations at r.e.m Beauty, which is the cosmetics company founded by Ariana Grande. I oversee all of operations and supply chain for us. So I work very closely with Capacity, our logistics provider. I oversee production, forecasting, as well as project management here. So thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thanks, Lauren. And I always like to disclose when there's any potential conflict of interest. And I think it's fair to share that I am personally an investor in Alex's company, Passport. I also say that I wouldn't be an investor if I didn't believe in the business, and excited about what it is that he's building. And Alex is similarly an investor in my business, Third Person. So now that we have that out of the way, I'm also an Ariana Grande fan, Lauren, and in a prior life was a customer of Thom's back in my early e-commerce days of Birchbox. So yeah, thank you to the three of you. So let's get into things. Sort of mentioned it earlier, but a week away from Thanksgiving, I think Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Not that I want to insinuate that I'm kind of an old guard here, but back in my early e-commerce days, 15 years ago, 17 years ago when I started, I feel like Black Friday weekend was like the main event, the main e-commerce event of the year. And like I feel like it's starting to kind of elongate where with Amazon having their multiple Prime events throughout the year, and some of the other large retailers kind of following that. I feel like Black Friday isn't as kind of prevalent or important, significant as it was a decade or so ago, but maybe I'm delusional here. So I'm curious just to kind of go around the horn. Maybe we'll start with Lauren. How are you anticipating, Black Friday sales? I mean, presumably your product is a very giftable product. I know you just launched that new Wicked 2. What's it called?
Wicked for Good.
Wicked for Good, yeah. Shows
Yeah.
how much I know. Although I didn't know that you had that collaboration. So, yeah, I'm just curious. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Is Black Friday still like a big thing, or is it kind of boomerish to kind of suggest that?
No, I think it's definitely still a big thing. But like you said, I feel like it's gotten diluted over the years. It's like we start Black Friday in like July now. So yeah, I think definitely excited for it. We're definitely expecting a lot of volume to come through. It seems like no matter how early you promo it, then it doesn't prevent people from still wanting to shop on Black Friday. I think, and I'm sure we're going to dive into this later, but with the economic headwinds that we're all facing, with things getting more and more expensive, tariffs, inflation, etc. We're really focused on how we can get the most share of wallet, right, on Black Friday. People have so much money that I think they're willing to spend, and they're shopping for gifts. And how can we really make the incentive or the deal look really good to consumers? So for us, it's like, how can we sweeten the deal? Is it adding, a GWP with your purchase? Is it, I don't think people are always promo driven now. I think it's like, what else can I get within that purchase? Is it, if I spend more, can I get an extra product with it? So I think it's being able to be really ROI focused on how can we get more product into the hands of our customers.
Tom, from your perspective, given that you work with brands like Lauren's and dozens or maybe hundreds of others, maybe thousands of others, what are you seeing kind of collectively when you throw it all in the hopper? Um, is Black Friday still a thing that like it was when you started capacity 25 some odd years ago?
It's still a big thing. And across the section of the economy we see, which is admittedly a small-ish slice, it's really material to our business. It's very important to our clients' businesses. And yes, sales have been pulled forward. There has been a bit of dilution, but we consistently grow year on year, and we consistently see our highest concentration of activity in November and December. So whatever is going on in the American psyche where we need to show our affection to the people we love in just this one time of the year, it hasn't changed that much.
Alex, what about you from the kind of shipping parcel side? You obviously see a lot. Uh, uh, I'm curious, with your US perspective, but as well as given your purview on the international side, be it Canada or other countries overseas, how big is Black Friday? Is that still kind of a thing?
I would say for international, it's bigger abroad than it is even in the US. I before starting Passport, I used to run a personal shopping service that helped people abroad buy products from the US. And Black Friday, and I'll even throw in Cyber Monday because we serviced Amazon as well. That was obviously it's our biggest year of the year, but it was 25% that one day, that 2 day combo, Black Friday and Cyber Monday was 25% of all revenue for the entire year, just 2 days. Kind of crazy. And we definitely see it in our numbers. It's when cross-border shoppers, they're usually really savvy if they know to go on American stores and buy what they're looking for. They know that they're going to get good deals. Shipping is usually more expensive international, so they want to make it worth their while. So they've been saving up all the things that they want to buy instead of buying, multiple carts throughout the months. They kind of save it up and add a ton of stuff to cart because they know shipping is going to be like a flat rate, $15 or something like that. So they're doing that mental math. They're getting the savings on the discounting. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's even bigger abroad than it is in the US.
That is interesting. I wouldn't have anticipated that. If there's one thing that I've learned in my 20 some odd years here in the United States is that Americans love buying stuff. We love spending money. We love making money. We love accumulating money, and we love purchasing. We love transacting. So yeah, fascinating that it seems to be a bigger event overseas. Um, Lauren, I want to go back to you. I think I heard you starting to mention language around kind of promotional events around the holidays. Um, how do you think about sort of Black Friday promos? I mean, I was just on your website and I don't see anything yet promoting any sort of big one day or weekend sales. Is that something that? And I realize, Lauren, you're also on the operations side. I don't think you're
Mhm.
on the marketing side as well, but you're obviously work with your closely with your counterpart there. Are you looking at kind of having that like big blowout that I think many of us are kind of familiar with other brands, buy one get one free or 75% off or whatever it is, or is it more of a kind of just everyday sale and merchandising for the business?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of like trying to push through, bigger deals with, like I said, trying to get more product into the hands of our customers, in something that's enticing for them to add more to cart. So definitely trying to buy into the Black Friday hype. And I think it'll be a really big event for us this year. I think additionally we have other channels that we've added. So we recently started selling on Amazon with the new Wicked collection. We're part of Ulta Beauty in the US. We sell overseas in Sephora as well as Boots in the UK. So we're kind of on promotion everywhere during that next week. So definitely just trying to create more brand awareness, get people to try our product, and Black Friday is a great day to do that.
Absolutely. It'll be a good time to for me to purchase something for my wife. Hopefully she's not listening to this or won't listen to it. She usually doesn't like listen to me on webinars, so I'm pretty confident. I can tell her all the gifts I'll buy her and she won't discover that.
It'll still be a
Um,
surprise, yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. Um, Tom, I want to go back to you for a moment. In terms of peak season preparation, I mean, I heard you say it's still very much a thing at capacity, but I'm curious, just over the last couple of years, maybe since COVID, sort of as a big milestone, um, how have you and the team evolved your peak season prep? Has anything materially changed? Um, is it, I don't want to lead the witness necessarily, but has the dynamic with labor evolved? I know your facilities have a lot more automation than they had when I was a client there 15 years ago. So I'm curious, what are the kind of one or two or three things that has sort of evolved as you and your executive team have thought about capacity and their preparedness?
Yeah, it is a good question, and it is all about, preparedness lowers your cognitive load when you're in a time of crisis, and it allows people to be present and just execute, which is really what we need, because volumes go up 10x, in some cases more. There are clients that do a few hundred orders a day that will drop 10,000 orders a day during this period of time. And so there are three main legs to that. One is labor and HR strategy, and one is IT and software, mostly when I speak of that. And then one is material handling equipment. And I'll quickly touch on all three. With the labor, we're very exact when we bring it on early so that we can train the associates who will be doing those tasks that we deem appropriate for people who are coming in for a short period of time. That can be barcode-driven activities, light-driven activities, things that are a little bit like a video game that you can get up to speed on pretty quickly, but we still want to give them a little bit of time to acclimate to. In terms of IT, we undergo a code freeze at this time of year, but before then, we're doing really important things like getting hazmat diamonds on ground labels for clients like Lauren so that we can move more of that Wicked for Good launch faster. And then the final thing is preventive maintenance on all of our material handling equipment. Like, we were out there, late pretty much every night for the last week or so, just making sure everything is humming, because if it can break, it will, and this is the time of year it will choose to do so. So those are the key things. There are a few other things you do want to have some sort of wild cards in your back pocket. So operations has not needed the office staff to work for, I would say, over a decade. but we still come in. And with the exception of sales, who is not invited because they spend too much time on their cell phones, the rest of us are prepared to work. And, at a minimum, you can buy them pizza or bagels. And people want to be seen when they're really putting in the long hours. And it's important that the whole company come together during this period of time. So we still try to do that. And all of that, some of that's recent and intensified recently, but a lot of it's been part of our DNA for a long time.
Yeah. Alex, we sort of mentioned this earlier, but this whole tariff thing dynamic, how do you anticipate that impacting the next few weeks of the year? The final few weeks of the year. Do you see that? Yeah. What are your thoughts on sort of tariffs? And it feels like we're at a bit of a, I don't know if lull is the right word, but at least it's not as the news hasn't been as vociferous as it once was. There was a period early in the summer where every day there were policy announcements and changes and et cetera, and it feels like things have cooled at least for a moment. So yeah, how do you anticipate tariffs and that dynamic kind of impacting the last few weeks of sales here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Liberation Day was crazy. We actually call it Liberation Quarter at Passport because it was something every other week, and then there was a trickle, over the last maybe like couple of months. The most recent big move or announcement was Canada um, ran some ads in the U.S. referencing Ronald Reagan, and that really upset Trump, and he issued an extra 10% tariff. I don't know if it ever went into effect. I'm not sure actually if it has or it hasn't, but that was the last announcement. That was maybe like a month ago, something like that. And now we kind of have some stability. The big question right now is whether or not the Supreme Court is going to rule in the Trump administration's favor or not in regards to using the IEPA powers to issue these tariffs. Um, but I mean, like with peak season here, nobody should be making any changes or doing anything. So I don't think it's gonna make any impacts, whatever way it people think it's gonna go or it's not gonna go. There aren't gonna be any major tariff moves or changes over the next few months, anyways. And nobody really wants to change things up. So I think if it's okay, Matt, I'll answer a question maybe a little bit further ahead because I think like Q4 nothing really like you're stuck with whatever good or bad you've done throughout the year, and this is where you're at. Going forward, as ops people are planning, their next move, this court case um, uh, adds a little bit of complexity to the calculation because in theory, if the Supreme Court removes powers from the executive branch of issuing tariffs and it goes back to the legislative branch, Congress has to enact tariff as originally designed. Um, it can change the dynamic, and a lot of the Liberation Day tariffs can be rolled back. So that's a possibility. Um, I don't think that that's what's going to happen, my personal view. I think that ultimately the Trump administration is going to find other acts and laws that allow them to essentially, in effect, replicate what they had done under IEPA. I have some notes here. It's like Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act allows 15% tariffs for half a year, essentially. So that's just one example, and there's like a list of another five that give the executive branch. They just need to do a better job of you know, telling that story and justifying it because there's too many things going on for the Supreme Court in this current IEPA where like they're trying to say it's not a tax and basically they through this whole process I think that the Trump administration thought it was a given that this was just going to go through and it might not even be challenged but I think for the next round, they're not going to put themselves in this precarious position, and they're going to try to follow the letter of the law. And there likely is, frameworks by which they can implement tariffs under existing laws. And also, the Republicans still control both the House and Senate. So that's the other avenue. The Trump administration can push tariffs through Congress while the Republicans still control the Republicans still control the House and Senate before the midterms next year. So there's just so many avenues. So I would assume, as a operations leader at a brand, I would assume that the status quo is my best guess at what, I have to use for my decision-making purposes, with some uncertainty obviously around the corner.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it is fascinating, right? Because a chart that I've been following, the prediction markets, some of you might be familiar with Polymarket, and I've been kind of referencing it in my weekly newsletter for a few months now. When the event was first listed for betting on Polymarket, it was roughly 50-50% chance that the Supreme Court would overturn the administration's tariffs. And today, now that we're about 2 weeks into the court case at the Supreme Court, I think when I checked it the other day, it was like 24%, or essentially the inverse. So there's 75% chance that the Supreme Court would or will overturn the tariffs. But yeah, the sentiment that I've heard is very much aligned with what you're suggesting, Alex, which is that the Trump administration will likely figure out, sort of six of one, half a dozen of another, right? If they don't get it under IEPA or, what it is, they'll get it under some other condition, whether, they pass a bill or, a law. So, yeah, I think the status quo is probably the right approach, going forward. Um, Lauren, I want to ask you something, maybe sort of a two-parted question, but you mentioned that r.e.m Beauty is on Amazon. You do sell on Amazon. I think you mentioned specifically that Wicked collaboration, but maybe some other SKUs as well. Um, I'm curious, what's sort of that decision factor to sell on Amazon when you have your own kind of D2C site, which looks, which is a beautiful site. Looks like it's probably built on Shopify. Um, how do you sort of balance that kind of direct channel, versus Amazon? And sort of my part B of that question is, with the, Amazon's kind of, famous same day, or one day, maybe 2 day, if you live in a more rural area or it's a rare SKU. How do you sort of impact that effect with your own sort of direct channel? And as great as Thom and the capacity team is at getting out orders, and I'm sure they get out all the orders same day, by noon. Shipping out of New Jersey to Alex in San Francisco will take some time, right? It will take a few days. So, yeah, curious how you think about those two channels.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had a late order ship from capacity. Every single order has been on time since the beginning of time. No, for us, I think, we're trying to figure out where our customer is. I mean, our brand is still relatively young. We've been in business for about 4 years now. We just had our fourth birthday last week. So I think we're just trying to figure out where people want to buy our product. I think Amazon itself, like, people really want that quick turnaround delivery when they're buying all the other things in their cart. So being able to be available where the customer wants us is absolutely what we're trying to go for. We're also, like I said, we're in Ulta as well. So, for that instantaneous want to buy it same day, we're available in store. And I think Ulta even offers now like delivery on DoorDash and other things where you can find another way to get it same day. So I feel like that's what a lot of retailers are leaning towards as well, is how can, like, I think I've ordered something from Sephora and had it delivered within 2 hours, when I was going to a wedding for that weekend. So, I think other retailers and places that we're at are kind of doing the heavy lifting for us, where we don't necessarily need to offer it on our brand, or on our website. We're you can find us somewhere and get it to you quickly. That's not necessarily always Amazon.
Yeah, it is fascinating because I'm kind of Uber Eats, and not just for food, but for I ran out of Traeger pellets the other day. Was smoking something on my grill, and I can't remember whether it was either Instacart or Uber Eats, and
Mhm.
I think I had something delivered from my local Ace Hardware. Maybe it was Home Depot, right? And I open up the DoorDash app, and Ulta pops up or Sephora pops up, and it's like I can literally purchase your product and get it delivered to me here in Nashville in minutes, right?
Mhm.
An
Yeah.
hour if it's a really slow experience versus the kind of traditional way of, I say traditional way, but the way of the last, 25 years, you go online and you place an order and you wait for it to ship, and then you get it a few days later, and it's while that's not going away, and that act of e-commerce is will likely grow 8 to 10% this year according to early signals from Adobe, who just bought SEMrush, FYI, for those familiar with SEMrush on the marketing side of the house. Yeah. um yeah, it is really incredible to kind of understand how, as a brand, the channels that you sell into are essentially selling through some of these other, super modern channels like, the Ubers and the DoorDashes and Instacart. So, yeah, very interesting.
In
Uh,
China, they're doing drone delivery now,
Yeah.
and it's coming here too.
yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm still kind of curious how that will act. I mean, I'm a little maybe too tongue in cheek, but I'm thinking like, you see something in the air and like, why don't you just grab it? But I guess it's just like mugging a delivery person, right? There's law and order in this country some of the time. But yeah, I would love to see it, right? I mean, I was just, I mean, not that it's exactly the same, but I was in a Waymo last week for the first time, and I know, Alex, you're probably laughing because they're all over San Francisco, but I was in Phoenix last week for a couple days and took my first Waymo. And for those who have not been in a Waymo, it is, I mean, it was one of the very few moments in my almost 40 years on this earth that I was like, holy moly, this is like, I'm at a loss for words with how cool this technology is, and like how no, I shouldn't say life changing, but how yeah, just how remarkable and special it is to be in a car that can take you from point to point and there's literally no driver there, right? It's weird, but it's amazing, and that's the future.
Mhm.
There's a company, Aurora, that has been clocking Texas to, or I'm sorry, Dallas to Houston truck rides, autonomous truck rides. Um, so it's coming to logistics as well. It's gonna, knock on wood, bring down everybody's cost, but it's already basically here. It's just not widely distributed.
Also, bringing it back, Matt, to your question about the customer, where we worked with maybe three or four carriers for a couple of decades, in the last year or two, we're adding a dozen carriers, and we're allowing our clients to ship, overnight via zone skip, and then get into an overnight network for 2-day shipping for lower than ground pricing by the majors. So they're an extraordinary proliferation of options, even for brands that are, in only one location in this large nation. So I think that competing with Amazon's service standard, which honestly, as a consumer at least, I find has slipped. I don't get everything same day, next day, 2 days. I find it kind of comes when it comes, and a lot of it depends on the Amazon seller. But for our clients, there are so many more options and so many more price points to enter with shippers. And I'm sure Alex knows more about this than I do, but there's also a lot more reporting, and they can really balance value with service, with speed, and use their own websites and their own options to compete with the retailers and what they have.
Super. Um, just want to say we have about 12, 13 minutes. I like us to get out at the 45-minute mark. Um, but yeah, please drop any questions you have or comments in the chat. There's also a Q&A button if you want to be super official. You can pop questions there, but putting them in the chat is sufficient. Um, I have a couple more questions, but Zach has asked a question. Um, the question is, I work in the perishable D2C space. He can only ship Monday through Thursday due to deliverable zip codes and time in transit. What strategy would you recommend through the holiday season to maintain high on-time delivery with carriers and quick fulfillment times when we have the limitations of perishable products? I know, Tom, you've fulfilled for a number of, temperature controlled sensitive products. I don't know, Lauren or Alex, if you've had any experience in the perishable space, but yeah, I don't know, Tom, if you have any initial thoughts there.
It's a good question, Zach. And yes, shipping Monday through Thursday is prudent, especially if you don't want things to sit in a truck over the weekend. We've had product that was both, going onto trucks that were going to be very cold, where you literally have to have the carrier put blankets on it, and then stuff that's going to be potentially too hot, where you really do not want it to leave at the end of the week and then sit over the weekend. There are carriers that specialize in this at this point, and they're definitely more of a premium offering. They're not adhering to some of those value propositions I mentioned earlier, where there's some very low cost options. But I think the key is to find a good partner. And in some cases, find partners who have enough data. We've done medical products and we've had GPS and temperature tracking in transit. So it really depends on the value of the product and exactly where you want to balance that combination of service and cost. But there are a lot of options. And I think, especially as you scale something like that, you can have increasing control over your cold chain.
Zach, I hope that answered your question sufficiently. Yeah, thanks, Tom. Um, I want to go back to Alex, talking about carriers and specifically capacity. Or, well, sorry, I don't mean Tom's capacity. I mean operational capacity. Um, uh, um, what do you anticipate, heading into, the final month of the year here with, there have been kind of horror stories over the last decade that I remember, one year it's UPS, next year it's FedEx, and next year it's the Postal Service with, and, sometimes it's, the regional carriers and some of the alternatives, with, boxes being stacked up in the warehouse and just really, really slow. Sometimes it's geo specific, other times it's, more systemic across their network. So, given that you have a view on sort of carriers broadly, um, what do you what do you hope for? What do you anticipate happening over the last few weeks here?
Yeah. So everybody was caught, when the tide came in during COVID, us as well, like we were behind on some packages. And we've since course corrected to the point where we had excess capacity last year, and that's what we ultimately solve for. And I think most carriers are have the same approach. They don't want to be in the same situation that they were at during COVID. I mean, what we do is we connect with our largest accounts in 3PLs over Slack, and we keep a very, very close communication going, and we really try to get as much anticipated volume predictions from our customers. They kind of know, at least to a certain extent, order of magnitude because they know when they're running their sales. So at the very least, it's good for brands to let us know when they're running their sales, and we basically plan accordingly. I mean, our space can be flexed. We can handle triple the volume. It's not a big deal. Um, but the labor is where you need to start to tap into some flex labor during the holidays, and just being able to be on top of that and predict it and be ready is key. Obviously, I think most carriers, frankly, have been burned during COVID, and now they've adjusted. We've had no problems with some of our partners, on the like LTL side. Everybody staffed up appropriately for peak season, and this peak season, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more spread out than usual. So Black Friday, obviously, we're already talking about it. Those are going to be huge days, but we're already starting to see a ton of volume in the weeks leading up to Black Friday, and that's actually been kind of the trend, of brands kicking off their Black Friday sales a little bit early, communicating that they're doing some discounting ahead of Black Friday. So that's been good for peak planning as well.
That's great. Yeah, I think I saw that. I might be butchering this, but I thought I read last month or in the last few weeks that it was either UPS or FedEx. Their seasonal hiring was pretty much kind of stagnant year over year. And I just remember in prior years, you'd have these massive figures of bringing in, 50,000 seasonal, 100,000, 20,000 seasonals. And, I think it could just be that, function of automation in their facilities and other variables that allow them to be a little bit more sort of staffing neutral, during this time of year. But to your last point, Alex, I think it was Aaron Rubin from Ship Hero, who many of us know or know of at least. He has Ship Hero's warehouse management software. Supports. I think Aaron says over 1% of U.S. e-commerce GMV. So they do see quite a bit flow through their system. And he said on Monday that that was the biggest shipping day of the year. So I think to a point that was made earlier, I think Lauren, you may have mentioned it. Sort of the health of the consumer. It seems like as a whole, people are continuing to spend money, and we should anticipate this peak season being bigger than last peak season, which is good for certainly everyone on this call. Um, I see we have, it looks like Marcus, UPS hiring drop is due to automation and loss of Amazon volume. Well, yeah, that is very true, Marcus. I think Amazon is now back in FedEx's hand for a little bit. They just signed an agreement. So yeah, interesting to see sort of the game of hot potato with Amazon. Um, we have just a few minutes here. I want to ask maybe Thom, one quick question, and then I do want to go around the horn, just sort of lightning round style. But Thom, I'm curious, given that you work with lots of e-commerce brands, many that are, I think most of us would consider startup brands, and I don't mean that as a pejorative, just younger brands, companies like Lauren's, and you've been working with her for some time now. So, like, particularly as we get into 2026 and Q1 2026, which in my experience tends to be when brands are starting to kind of sniff around and probably blame all their shortfalls on their 3PL and start looking for a new 3PL. Like it or hate it, it's just the reality. Um, uh, what do you typically see are like common mistakes, maybe like the most common operational mistake that brands make as they scale from kind of that 1,000 order a month level, or maybe you might only see them when they're kind of that 5 to 10,000 orders a month, but when they're scaling to the point where Lauren's company is, and even larger, what are maybe the one or two most common mistakes that you see brands making?
So there's a big range because we do sort of start at the 5,000 orders per month range, and the bigger clients are doing more than 100,000 orders a month. It's not easy to forecast e-commerce volume. And as Alex said, they certainly know when they're going to run their promotions, but it's extremely difficult to accurately predict. And we find that some of the young meteoric brands will deliver 4x on their projections. And some of the more established, often publicly listed brands that we work with, their marketing team delivers a forecast. Their supply chain team cuts it in half. We cut that in half. That's what we build our labor plan around. So we're both working with the brands, and we really appreciate forecasts, and many clients don't provide it, but of course clients like Lauren do. And we actually upload those forecasts. So we use those in aggregate to make a plan. So even if a client is only shipping 500 orders a day, or thinking they're going to ship 500 orders a day, and even has a contractual cap at 500 orders a day, we're going to go, maybe to 4,000 orders for that client, because we know on that day we can deploy the resources to make it happen. But we're also going to try and balance our resources across all of our clients, get everybody clean from the peak season as quickly as possible, and also allow our people a humane quality of life and balance out the OT costs. So I think that the challenge for the brands really is forecasting. It's very, very tough to put your line in the sand and say, this is where I'm going to be. You can look at aspirational numbers, but it's really hard to nail it.
Lauren, what do you think? Given that you're kind of in the shoes of that, emerging brand, what are maybe, the biggest learning or, one or two of the biggest learnings that you've had in your few years?
Um, yeah, I mean, echoing Thom, I mean, it's really difficult to forecast things, especially being a really young brand where we're consistently launching new products and trying to figure out what works for us. I think biggest learnings over the last kind of 3 years that I've been with the brand is one, I think I don't think I fully grasp the international star power that Ariana Grande has. And this is one of the startups that I've worked at that has the largest international business. So with, working with Passport as well, it allows us to serve those customers internationally. It wasn't, a huge part of businesses that I've worked with in the past. But we really do, I mean, I think, international is a really big, sizable part of our business. So I think that's been a big learning for us is how can we tap into international customers? We do service multiple international markets in retail. But for us, e-commerce continues to grow year over year. So being able to service those customers and do it at a cost conscious or do it in a cost conscious way. I think that's been a really big learning for us.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. So one final question with the minute we have left, just sort of around the horn, lightning round. Um, Whoever wants to start, but what is your biggest fear for this peak season? Nope, Thom, I think you're on mute.
I'm just thinking out loud, uncertainty and soft volumes. I think that's, obviously I could be afraid in the other direction, but I believe that we can handle a spike above forecasted volumes. So I think the amount of uncertainty, we look at the complexity of the tariffs, but what does it really mean to business owners? What it means to me is like, I don't know what's going on, and I don't particularly like that. There are lots of unknowns that I'm willing to deal with, but it's the unknown unknowns. So that's mine.
Alex
I'll
or Lauren?
go.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I'll go. I think for me, it's probably stockouts or, unforecasted volume. We have an idea of what we're going to do. But, making sure that we have the right product at the right time. And then, kind of once we recover after Black Friday, where are we sitting in terms of demand? What do I need to get, if we went out of stock of anything, what do I need to get back into stock of, to kind of really prepare for, going into January.
Alex.
Um, I've been hearing some rumblings that UK and EU are looking to drop their duty de minimis ASAP as early as 2025. So, trying to load balance our engineering team around peak season requirements and things while also being ready to strike if that's what's required in early 2025. So worried that news might hit that the de minimis is going away in 2025. I mean 2026.
Well, good. Well, thank you everyone for your time. I think we covered quite some ground. We asked a lot of questions and appreciate the audience participation as well. As I said at the beginning, everyone who registered will get a link to this. This will be on our socials shortly, certainly by the end of the week. And yeah, feel free to look up Alex or Thom or Lauren on LinkedIn. I know they'll each be happy to connect with you. I'm also happy to intro you if you send me an email. But thanks everyone for joining and taking some time out of your day this morning.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, team. It's great to speak with
Thank you
all of you.
all.
Ditto. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Appreciate it.